Each and every one of us has something that we are uniquely positioned to do, where we are the best person on earth to solve that problem. I think it's less about discipline and more, are you doing the thing that you want to do or the thing that you think other people want you to do? There are some things that people are embarrassed to do themselves, even if they're the best folks in the world to do that thing, because they fear what other people are going to think about their doing that thing. And, the minute you start focusing on other people's thoughts, you're wasting your time. Hi, this is Tristan Walker. You're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers. Welcome to episode 238 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. I am super excited for you all to hear from this week's guest, Tristan Walker, who is the founder and CEO of Walker & Company, which is home to the brands Bevel and Form Beauty. So we're going to be talking to Tristan about his entire dream driving journey, but what I enjoyed especially is really learning from Tristan how as a kid he had these big dreams and aspirations and how he spent much of his life figuring out how to make them a reality. But at the same time, he also had to adjust to what dream driving realistically looked like at each new stage of his journey. So we're going to talk about the two things that he thinks helped guide him, which is figuring out what he was uniquely positioned to do and also learning how to recognize opportunities. Tristan's going to share the successes and challenges he's experienced along the journey, as well as tips for any dream driver listening in who has big ideas and even bigger goals. There's a lot of things that we're going to discuss, which include the myth of personal discipline, what it was like getting Bevel off the ground, why ownership matters, why he decided to sell his company to Procter & Gamble. That was a big move. Could have been risky. Could have been something a lot of people say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. But Tristan's going to tell you why he did and why he thinks it was a great move for his business. Tristan had a very interesting take on legacy, and I really think it's something that we all should, discuss. So guys, we couldn't have Tristan Walker on the show and not do a giveaway, right? I'm really excited. This week, we're going to be giving away one Bevel shave kit to a lucky listener. If you want to enter to win, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/win, dreamsanddrive.com/win. And in this Bevel shave kit, I'm going to tell you what you guys are going to get. You're going to get a safety razor, a brush, 20 blades, a 2-ounce priming oil, 3.4-ounce shaving cream, and 3.4-ounce restoring balm. If you're somebody who shaves, if you're somebody who knows somebody who shaves, if you're somebody who wants to experience the Bevel brand, please enter this contest. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win. And as always, if you're listening and you love what Tristan's saying, please share this episode with a friend. I love it when you guys are going on Instagram, posting it to your Instagram stories, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are on social media. Make sure that you are telling people that you're listening to Dreams and Drive and that you're learning something. You can find us across the board at Dreams and Drive on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. And make sure wherever you're listening, you're subscribed so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. And one last thing, guys, Dreams and Drive shop is still open if you want to get your Dreams and Drive t-shirt, crew neck sweatshirt, support the show. Go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, so let's get into this week's episode. Hi, Tristan. Welcome to Dreams and Drive.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on the show. I feel like I've been following the Bevel journey, the Walker & Company journey from a distance, right? Always clapping for you from afar. So finally having you on the show is kind of like another one of those moments of, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
No, it's happening. I'm very excited to kind of share some of our story. And, I know you guys have the audience to really appreciate some of the things we've gone through.
Yeah, I love to start interviews going back in time, right? I really think it's important to reflect on who we were as young children, right? So if I had to say who was Tristan, the young child, the adolescent, how would you describe that? Who were you at that time?
I was a huge ego. I tell people, even in my entrepreneurial journey, I've been around, 7 years doing this. In that time, I'm 7 years more married. I've had 2 children. I've hired, tens of people. I've had to let go tens of people. And throughout that experience, it's really kind of strengthened my resolve and kind of sapped my ego quite a bit. When I was younger, I thought I can do anything on my time. And I had to realize that it wasn't on my time. And my faith actually taught me that, I just had to be patient, because those steps are ordered in ways that I could never anticipate.
Where do you think that came from? Because you grew up in Queens, New York, right?
Yeah, I'm from Queens. I, growing up, especially how I did, I only had one goal, and that was to get as rich as possible, or frankly, as wealthy as possible, as quickly as possible. So I was driven to do that. And, the thing that really changed me was my getting married. I got married when I was 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
And, fundamentally changed my life. And, I like to say a lot that, you think about love, it's all about release of the ego. And that was really the start of that journey, and completely changed the way I kind of viewed the world, where it was less about getting wealthy as quickly as possible, although it's still important to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more about kind of doing the right things for the right reasons, and taking care of my family first, along with my faith, and the rest will kind of fall into place.
All right, so that ego. So let's talk about Tristan before 21, right? Because I think it's really important to understand who you were before that shift happened and how it kind of inspired what you're doing today. So I know you went to Hotchkiss, which is a private independent school, college preparatory school. I went to a college prep school in New Jersey
Cool.
called Dwight Englewood. So I know that whole lifestyle of kind of going from the urban, all Black environment to being one of few, right? And I like to ask my fellow prep school kids this is like, what did you realize about the world and your place in it at that time?
I realized two things. I realized first that there was the other half of the world that I never saw.
Right? Like what? Mansions? What? You have a nanny? What is this?
It was even more than that. It was, I like to describe it as like the importance of name. I literally went to school at Rockefellers and Fords, right? Like it was kind of surreal that those folks existed. It was like this mythic kind of last name ethos there. But I also quickly realized that, I can compete with them just like everybody else. And that was one of the most formative, or it was an incredibly formative experience for me, because it gave me not the ego, but it gave me the confidence that I could do it too. Where kind of our last name would have as much importance and resonance as theirs did.
It's interesting that you say that. I interviewed Craig Robinson, Michelle Obama's brother, a few months back.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said that Princeton gave him, because we're both Princeton alum, he said intellectual confidence, right? And that being something that he didn't realize was so important until he left the environment. As you went to college, what then was the motive for you? You had all this confidence that you built up throughout your high school days. Was the goal still then, let's make money? Or did you start to
no doubt.
a little bit different?
I was in a rush. I graduated college in 3 years with a 4.0 GPA, right? Because I was like, I got to figure this out. And I rushed through it. And my first job out of university was working on Wall Street. I was an oil trader on Wall Street. I couldn't think of any more capitalist job on the planet, right? Than kind of trading things at a Wall Street desk. Only to realize that it was the worst job for me ever. And it was a good rude awakening for me to really take stock of what was important, and kind of take a break from that way of thinking.
Did you have any other passions at this time? Because it just seemed like you were moving so quickly. You were so driven. Was there anything that you wanted to do, but you kind of said, no, let me just stick to the plan?
Frankly, I never had time to think about things I would have loved to have done. It's changed now that I have kind of the freedom to do so. Yeah. And especially now that I think about, how I'm raising my own sons, I'll never let them make that mistake. I just didn't have the time to be able to think about other things other than kind of that original singular goal of trying to get as wealthy as possible. So I wasted a lot of time. I did waste a lot of time. But, fortunately for me, I realize things when they're not working out sooner than most. And that's something that I've appreciated throughout my journey quite a bit. I left Wall Street at the right time, fast enough, right? I got to go to Stanford and my whole worldview changed. So just as quick as I get into things that I'm passionate about, I'm also very quick to turn on a dime as necessary if it's not working out in the way that it should be.
Yeah, I know you also, once you left Stanford, you started working at Foursquare, right? Am I getting the timeline right?
Well, so actually, I was kind of working at Foursquare during my second year of business school. So first
Okay.
year of business school, I was working at Twitter. Second year of business school, I started full time at Foursquare. I graduated and then worked another 2 years at Foursquare after that.
All right. So at Foursquare, then you were seeing a lot. I know that the party, not the party. Sorry, the company was still in its infancy. It's kind of, you were like, I think you said in one of your interviews, you were the third hire or the third person on the team or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
so
very
there
small.
was two founders, and then at the time, engineer Harry, he was like half on, half off, but just about to be full time, and then there was me.
Okay.
So I was employee one and a half, kind of.
Did you see yourself as possibly ever starting your own at this point in time, or were you kind of invested in being a team player or a team, part of the
No, no,
team?
no, no. I mean, I wanted to start. I wanted to start my company from the day I left Wall Street and went to Stanford.
Okay.
It just so happened that I found a company that I was pretty passionate about. I wasn't a founder, but I felt like it was as much as my baby is theirs, right? I got to build something, and I was passionate about what they were doing. But all along, I knew I had to try it myself at some point.
What were the big skills that you think you were learning during this time? Like the key things you're like, yo, Tristan, you are the bomb I'm the bomb at doing this stuff. Like I know this.
At Foursquare.
Just at this point in time. So it kind of could have been like it kind of could have been kind of like a combination of all the skills you're learning at this point in time, but doesn't necessarily have to be just from Foursquare that you feel like you were becoming very skilled at these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of it is me versus just being led into places that I should have been.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I happened to kind of realize that like Twitter was going to be a great thing and Foursquare was going to be a great thing before anybody else cared. Right? I remember having classmates in business school think I was crazy for pursuing those opportunities. I am very focused on what I want to do and achieve. I never stepped foot in the career management center at Stanford Business School, right? I knew I wanted to work at Twitter, got that. I knew I wanted to be a part of Foursquare, got that, right? I'm very singular in my kind of focus, right? I also know, and this is a bit of my success at Foursquare and just kind of things that I've done in general, like I'm always willing to kind of ask why that fifth time when people kind of give up after the fourth, right? Like I'm always willing to kind of do that extra thing. Yeah. And it kind of worked out for me. I had no idea I ever live in Silicon Valley. I never thought that a Twitter or a Foursquare would have taken off as much as they had. I just followed things that I was authentically committed to, and they tended to work out. And that happened to be a formula for success for me. So, is that something that, I'm uniquely good at? No, it's just I worked on things that I wanted to do. And fortunately, they worked out for me.
What tips would you have for that person then who is having a bit of trouble maintaining that personal discipline, right?
I think it's less about discipline and more, are you doing the thing that you want to do or the thing that you think other people want you to do? And, really thinking seriously about that. There are some things that people are embarrassed to do themselves, even if they're the best folks in the world to do that thing, because they fear what other people are going to think about their doing that thing. And, the minute you start focusing on other people's thoughts, you're wasting your time. The kind of lesson that I, would ask everybody is, what are you doing? And then ask, why are you doing it? And if the answer isn't because I feel authentically committed to doing it, then it's more likely than not that you're doing the wrong thing.
So at this point then, because I know you also have that I want to make money, right? Let's talk about this idea for Bevel. How did that come about? I know there's a long kind of backstory to that, but kind of give us the Cliff Notes version of how Bevel came to be. So I really want to get into some of the other things there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Bevel came to be in the same way that Foursquare and Twitter came to be for me. I wanted to work on something that fundamentally would change my lifestyle. And for a long time, I realized I couldn't shave because brands weren't giving me the tools I needed to do it. And I felt if there's anybody more authentically committed to fixing this problem, it was going to be me. to have the opportunity to raise money to solve the problem that I wanted to solve. And I knew it was not only a problem that I had, but millions of other Black men in the world. So what an amazing opportunity to be uniquely positioned to do one thing. That to me is one of the most freeing things that you can do. And I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, and I like the idea about uniquely positioned, right? Because you kind of had the experiences in all these different worlds that you understood what it meant to get started. But even then, when you actually were getting started for Bevel, what were some of the hard things that you came across, like in the first few months of taking this from an idea to actually executing?
Funny enough, like I hate to be so nonchalant about it. I mean, it was no difficult than any other job that I've ever had to do. Right. You got to get in, you got to find an opportunity, you got to solve a problem. And then you got to do the work to find the folks who will help you solve that problem. Yeah, it wasn't kind of super easy to raise money, right? But we did, much like everybody else would have to. It wasn't super easy to, figure out how this razor is going to get designed, but we did, right? Much like everybody else has to. So, much of the difficulty, at least for me, was just being in an industry for other people and their thoughts, I had no business being in. Right.
Wow, you're a Black man. You shave, right? Like, why did people count you out of this business?
That's a good question. You have to ask them. I think some of it is I didn't have consumer packaged goods experience. I never made hardware in my entire life. I was never an entrepreneur at that point. I can give you all their sorry excuses, but you'd have to ask them. What you asked me, I asked them, and eventually some people agreed and gave us money for it, and those are the people who continued to give us money for it.
But you know what I like about your story, though, is like you said earlier, you didn't listen to them, because a lot of people could have easily said, maybe I'm not the best person for this, or let me try something else. But you kind of kept doing it, although the odds, or it might have taken you longer. Why do you think you stuck to it?
Well, there's no reason why I would ever think that I wasn't going to be the best person in the world to do it, because I thought about why I felt I was the best person in the world to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's no one who was going to tell me otherwise. I had spent 15 years in that point trying to shave. Nobody fixed that problem for me. Right? Like, I know what I'm talking about. I, at that point, had worked at these kind of companies, had been in Silicon Valley, amassed a net. So I had a perspective on the market that not everybody has, and especially the folks on the other side of the table with the money. I kind of earned my stripes a little bit working in a startup and getting roughed up throughout that kind of period. So people believed in my ability to do it. I felt uniquely positioned, and I especially felt uniquely positioned to do it when I started to hear no's a lot. And at that point, I realized maybe I recognized something that they did. And then I knew I had something pretty special. It's one thing to hear no's and not feel that you're uniquely positioned to do something. And I mean, like, not that you have a good idea. I mean, you're uniquely positioned to do it. Like, I had 15 years of experience of not having my problem solved. So I knew it, right? And to hear no about that was just ignorance, right? The idea was going to morph into whatever it needed to be. But the fundamental first principle of my not being able to shave and nobody giving me products to solve that problem was crazy and ignorant. And if you couldn't see that, then you didn't need to give me money, right? Because you were never going to see it.
I think you talked about this a lot when you speak, is the idea of, if you could do it again, you probably wouldn't have gone for investing, right? Because just of all that comes with going for funding and having to pay it back and all of that. I always love to ask these questions in a what if world, right? Do you think Bevel could have bootstrapped and still been as successful as you guys are today?
I don't know. If I cared to bootstrap at the time, I probably would have built a completely different company. The reason I say what I say now is, the difficulty in raising money and kind of having trade-off and choices and that sort of thing. But, now I've built a health and beauty products company that sold to a large conglomerate, right? Like, I've done that. So if I started something again, I probably wouldn't do that same thing again, and I would probably work on, again, the thing that's most important to me, I'm working on things that I'm authentically committed to and uniquely positioned to do. And frankly, I do not need to build $1 billion company, right? Like that's not the stuff that gives me joy. The stuff that gives me joy are just solving people's problems at however small the scale. I know that I can build a company that generates a good amount of revenue, right? I know that I have the confidence and ability to build a profitable company, but also know that I feel my most free when I own all of it. So for me, it's about ownership as opposed to scale and magnitude of what it could be, right? And that's the message that I'm trying to give to folks. Ownership matters because it allows you to make choices that you wouldn't necessarily be allowed to make if you raise tens of millions of dollars.
So when you say ownership, I want to make sure I'm defining it the right way. How do you define ownership then?
I mean, you own 100% of your company or the overwhelming majority of it, right? But like every percentage point you give up is a percentage of decision making that you have to give up, right? And that's not to suggest that raising money is a bad thing. It's not. It's just that you need to understand the trade-off you get with giving up some of that.
Now, I was going to say then, as a Black entrepreneur, then, do you think that's even more important?
I think as an entrepreneur, period, it's important, especially for Black entrepreneurships. I think it's super important because frankly, I mean, there are a lot of things that don't require you're raising money for it, right? I think the problem is, and this is what I've kind of recognized. You asked, would Bevel have raised money if I could start it all over again? If I had the bootstrap, I probably wouldn't have launched 7 products. Probably would have launched 1, you know? I probably wouldn't have had a kind of elaborate website. I probably would have had something simple like a Shopify, right? Or something like that. So I think the problem, especially with raising money, is that your ambition has to grow with it, as opposed to narrowing your scope to build things that get you to product market fit to allow you to make the decisions that you want to make around scaling or not, right? When you raise money right away, you get rid of that choice. So it's hard for me to say, like, could Bevel have existed without the money? I don't know, right? Maybe not. Maybe it could have. What's past is past, right? We did what we did, and we had a wonderful outcome. What I'm focused on is like from time T equals 0 plus. What does Tristan Walker consider as if he were to ever start another company? And what can I encourage other folks to think about as they're building their own companies now? And to me, it was ownership. To someone else, it might be something else.
Yeah, and let's talk about some other things that other companies can consider. One thing that I have to give you a big pound for this is your early interest in podcasting, right? I know that when you guys were starting out, you saw the power in podcasting, and as somebody who has been a podcaster for over 4 years, I really respect that. So thank you. Why did you make sure that you wanted to be in on this podcasting thing? Because a lot of companies weren't necessarily investing their ad dollars in podcasting, but you saw it as an opportunity, especially with people like Charlemagne, Combat Jack, the Loudspeakers Network. Like that was definitely a major player for you. So why was that? How did you identify podcasting as a good vehicle to get a good platform to get out?
I mean, again, I only do things that I'm authentically committed to. Like I listen to them, and Reggie, Combat Jack, he hit me up one day with Chris Morrow at Loudspeaker, and they were like, we love what you represent. Send us some product. And I was like, okay, great. We didn't even talk about kind of the advertising stuff at that point. Reggie used it, loved the product. And then we started to talk about how we could make that stuff work. And also I wanted to support Black businesses, right? Like I care very much about Black economic empowerment and advancement. And there was a great opportunity to get these folks who are kind of getting off the ground to get started, especially as number one, a lot of the large incumbents didn't care to out of fear. And then 2, it was just the right thing to do. Like, I mean, at that point we had raised, millions of dollars, right? And, to kind of experiment with these guys was worthwhile. I also kind of, see where things are moving, right? All this terrestrial stuff, it has to go digital. All those kind of big DJs are going to have their own podcast presence. It was going to expand. Podcasting is evergreen. So you can listen to an episode from 3 years ago and still hear our ads, right? So that amortizes the cost of our spend. There's all types of like business related stuff, but that didn't matter to me. because we said, let's figure it out. And frankly, after that first drop that Reggie did, which wasn't scripted, it was about 5 minutes long. It was authentic. We knew we had a formula that can work, and we did that for everybody. So it wasn't the case that we would even negotiate ads. We made people use our products first, and they had to authentically like it, right? So everything for me is about authenticity, because the minute we break that, we kind of break trust. And it worked out in that way. And frankly, podcasts, thankfully for them too, has really taken off and exploded.
What are some other things that you think you did in the early Bevel days that really helped you grow your customer base and also your community? Because I think those things are different sometimes, right? You can have a community and advocates, but they might not be your customer. Like, I know that I wouldn't buy a Reslo shaving, a face shaving blade, right? Because I don't shave, but, I'm still a community member. So how did you start to build that tribe?
Yeah, I mean, people would be surprised. I mean, our community and our consumers aren't necessarily the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people have to pay for I kind of talk a lot about as far as we think about like supporting Black business. That's important. Like, we got to talk about it, but we got to do it too. But some of the early things that we did, like Nas was an ambassador of ours, but he was also our first investor, right? We had an investment team of folks that represented the audience that we wanted to serve. Nas, Magic Johnson, John Legend, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala. Like, I wanted to ensure Ryan Leslie, folks that had to use products like these themselves. There were no special aisles for them, right? Mm-hmm. Investing in the cause and in the mission. So it was great that we had kind of those celebrity voices help us out, right? And strengthen that community voice. The Nas thing really helped us, at least kind of get us out there. And then he put us in a song, and then we really became something pretty interesting. But, we didn't ask him to go in the song. He did it on his own volition. And that is really like a testament to, I think, everything that I wanted to create. At that point, I realized it didn't have to be $1 billion company. It just had to be something that like entered the zeitgeist for our people in a way that they could be proud of. I think we accomplished that.
And at the same time then too, because I always feel like there's always successes and then there's always challenges. What do you think was your biggest challenge then in building the Walker and Company brand, Bevel? Because I know you also introduced Form, which was your product from women. Were there some challenges that you really had a tough time?
Yeah, I mean, the only challenge I've had was reconciling the amount of money I raised with the valuation of the company. It was an existential issue for me. I spent 70% of my time thinking about that. I had raised my Series B round $24 million at too high of a valuation relative to the revenue that we had. As a function of it, we had to grow the business. So we had to make choices that we probably wouldn't have made at lower valuations or not having had to raise that money. We launched a trimmer probably a couple months faster than we needed to. We launched Form probably a year faster than we needed to. And they all worked out for us. But it just caused distractions and took us away from our core businesses, right? As a function of it, we needed to hire more people to support these new things that we were creating, right? And, cash is king. You got to manage your cash flow well. Throughout that process, at some point, we had to do a reduction in force, right? Which is one of the hardest days of my entire kind of time as a CEO of a company. But it's something I had to do. I went through it. And, one of the saddest days became one of my proudest because I think we handled it well with grace and all that stuff too. But everything really stemmed back to raising that money at that high evaluation at a time we didn't need to. But frankly, I was given that valuation. So it's hard to turn that down. But in hindsight, I probably would have thought twice about it.
And so for people who don't understand what that means, like, were there other ways to, like, you said you were giving that valuation and something that like an external party came in and kind of looked through everything and said, this is how much you guys are worth?
Yeah. So we had an investor pitch. We started our fundraise. This is our Series B round on a Thursday. Met with the investor that Thursday. We had a term sheet on Monday.
Wow.
It was for the amount that we wanted to raise at a valuation that was pretty good. And we said, let's take it. Like, it's not even worth going out and speaking to other people. So we got like really, 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 really lucky on that.
Okay.
But that luck actually inspired a vicious cycle that frankly was my fault, right? Like in growing the business faster than we probably were ready for.
And I was going to say, because you mentioned this earlier about yourself, is you had this speed about you, right? Ever since you were younger, you had this drive. How do you think then that entrepreneurs can check their ambition and their drive and kind of slow down sometimes, even when their natural inclination may be to do things fast? Like, what's the checkpoints that you would say, make sure to do this?
I think this is a little bit different because I raised the money that I needed. Right. So it wasn't about speed. It's now that the money's in the bank, then you realize you have to return it.
Right? Okay.
Which, makes you take different choices. Right. Your board meetings are slightly different than they used to be. The expectations on returning that capital is a little bit different than it used to be. And again, it's not to suggest that my raising that money at that valuation couldn't have worked out even better. Right. Like there are things that I could have done better as a CEO leader in order to make that happen. But, I was encouraged to take that money that we had, step on the gas because we were really the only players in the market to win the market. But, we, instead of going deep, we broadened out horizontally, which was probably the mistake that I made. But it worked out fine for us in the end. So, when I, at least directly answering your question, number one, if you didn't raise the money, then by definition, you have to slow down because you're purposeful about your choices, right? Mm-hmm. If you do raise the money, the thing to keep in mind is make sure that you have a team of folks that will force you to be purposeful about your choices, right? And kind of challenge your assumptions on how fast you need to grow the business. Because if that doesn't happen soon enough, you'll make some pretty tough choices.
You're reading my mind because the question I wrote down here to ask you was, who do you think was the most important people, or on your personal board of advisors during this time? Because I think we all need people in our, in the cabinet sometimes to kind of go back to and talk to things. So who were like the roles that were really important to you?
Yeah, I had an independent board member. His name is Rob Price. He used to be the CMO of CBS. One of the most brilliant people I've ever met. Now he's the CEO of School of Rock. He was the president of Edible Arrangements. Like, good guy. And I was having a lot of trouble with kind of the fundraising. My board at one point, as an independent board member, he looked at me and said, "Tristan, this is capitalism," right? And it was one of those moments where it's like, you know what, you're right, man. Like, I know what I was signing up for. And the other thing, capitalism goes both ways, right? And it's important that I need to, certainly as a fiduciary, I need to do what's in the best interest of my shareholders for sure. But also have people on my team who are relying on me for their livelihoods, among other things, right? So I can make choices, but I have to own the trade-offs that I'm making with those choices. And his kind of point around, this being capitalism was just that. There are no necessarily wrong choices. There are outcomes that don't go in your favor, right?
That's a great way to
be purposeful about it.
Yeah, that is a great way to think about it. There are outcomes that don't always go in your favor. So then, thinking about that, then 2018, you get this call from P&G. I don't know if it was a call or an email, right? Procter & Gamble. How did that change your idea of the future?
Yeah, I mean, and this was probably January of 2018. We started to get calls, emails from probably 4 or 5 different companies, all at the same time. It was really, really weird. And Procter & Gamble wasn't one of them yet. So at that point, once you start engaging these folks, it can be really distracting, and you have to make the commitment to either continue or not, right?
And just to clarify for the audience, they wanted to buy the company, right?
Or something, buy or invest or something. But most of them wanted to buy. And at that point, I had to reconcile a couple of things. Number one, I couldn't raise money, right? Because remember, I had a pretty high valuation that I didn't hit the hurdle rate for yet. So it was tough. Unless like I did like actually, no, let me take the back. By that time, I had raised a slight round before that, and we actually did like a bit of a down round, in order to kind of get the business going, which worked out for us, and it was great. So we had some runway. So we had the choice: we can either sell the company or go out and raise more money. At the time, no one wanted to invest in e-commerce companies anymore. We were actually had a pretty good growing business, right? That we were proud of. You know, we had made the kind of reduction in force, which tightened up our cash position. And like, we felt that we had a path, right, towards like continued good growth. But we couldn't raise money, right? It was just the whims of the market and the investors within it that shut down that opportunity. So the thing that I cared most about was, you know, this vision persisting for the next 100+ years, right? And it was fortunate that we had so many folks that were excited about what we were doing reach out to us at the same time. So by that point, you know, we had been speaking to these folks for 2 or 3 months. It was like March, April. And at that point, you know, I looked at my CEO. I was like, listen, we got to commit to this, right? Because it's distracting. We can't focus anything else in the business. We were getting into like due diligence phase where they were starting to ask for docs and stuff like that, which takes a lot of time. And then for some of them worked out, some didn't work out. So we kept dragging it along because we wanted to ensure that we had a competitive kind of bidding environment, right, for the company. And in the summertime, Procter & Gamble kind of knocked on the door. And, you know, our values matched. Like I felt, you know, we want to be around 150 years from now. No other company had done that other than Procter & Gamble. You know, there are very few companies on earth who've done that, let alone in our industry, right? Values match. You know, I told them I wanted to build this company in Atlanta. They didn't even bat an eye to it. They had a vision for multicultural beauty that matched our own and saw us being really a guiding light for them in that way. They serve 5 billion people around the planet who happen to be folks of color, majority of whom, right? So everything that we had wanted and built the company for, there was an opportunity for us to activate much faster within this environment and still operate independently. All right. That's like Nirvana, right? Like we did it, you know? And so we really started seriously talking to them in August. We got a term sheet in October. We sold the company in December.
Wow. So definitely like the all of 2018 from January to December, that was like a 12-month process.
The serious part of the process was about 6 months, but the total process was about 12 months. Yeah. From the time we first started hearing from folks. But when we started getting serious about doing it, it was probably around month 4. So 8 months seriously, 12 months not so seriously with P&G, 5 to 6.
Did you ever have a fear that it wouldn't work out and that you made the wrong decision?
To what? To start the company?
To sell. Sorry, you know, because I feel like that's a big step, right? Like, was there ever any fear that this might not work out?
Well, a couple things. Number one, if we didn't sell, we probably would have run out of money after 6 months, something like that, right? Like, I mean, you need cash is king, right? Like, we have a growing business. You have to fund that business. Think about a world where walking company does not exist. Right? It's heavy, right? It's wild. Especially for all of the kind of good work and impact that we've had in the world, right? Now to activate, we're like, we can do that times 100 and are doing it times 100, right? Like, it's a big deal. So I am thankful. I think if I had sold the company to another company, maybe I'd be able to add more color to that question. But Procter & Gamble has fulfilled its side of the bargain. Right? Like they really have. I cannot be one of those disgruntled founders who sell a company to a larger company and say, it sucks. It doesn't. Right? I run my company independently. Right? I get to do it in Atlanta. We are accelerating our innovation. We get to leverage our $2 billion in research and development to make things that we had always wanted to on a faster timeline. I don't have to worry about raising money or cash anymore. Like, think about that. I would spend 70% of my time thinking about where we're going to raise our next dollar. I get those 70% of hours back.
That's stressful too, right? That must have been a lot of stress.
It's stressful, but it's the job, right? Like, it is the job. There's only 2 reasons any company fails. It's people give up or you run out of money. I knew I wasn't going to give up. So I spent most of my time ensuring we didn't run out of money for 6 years, right? That's every founder of a startup. There's no other reason why any company fails. Like it really boils down to one of those two things, right? So for me to take one of those things out of the equation, I get to focus on our people and I get to focus on our consumer. That is the stuff and the reason why I got in this in the first place, right? And this is why I also come back to like the raising money and like having to deal with the valuations and all that stuff. Now, if you don't raise money, you're forced to build a business, right? Ideally a profitable one, which makes some of the kind of cash constraint stuff less of an issue if you're doing it in the right way. Mm-hmm. Now I get to release myself of that. And Procter & Gamble, they continue to know and see that what we're doing is important and invest in it.
So, I love that you said one of the reasons why companies fail is because people give up. And, this whole podcast is called Dreams and Drive. So it's the opposite of that, right? People need to keep going. What advice then would you give to entrepreneurs who are at the brink of giving up, right? I think that's a very important moment, right? Like you're at the edge of the cliff and you could jump or you could kind of step away from it and try something else. Like what are some concrete things that you think are important for people at that, at that stage of the journey?
Well, I mean, I'll probably say something taboo, but frankly, not everybody's working on the right things, right? I mean, here's what I mean by that. They're not working on things that they are uniquely positioned to do or work on, right? They're working on ideas that they think could be good, right? But there's always going to be someone in that market who's uniquely positioned to do it and come and eat your lunch. So the first thing that I'd ask is, you should not give up if you feel uniquely positioned to do the thing that you're doing. It just so happens that everybody else needs time to catch up to your vision. But if you are not the person who's uniquely positioned to do something and you're not kind of making the traction that you're seeing, find the thing that you're uniquely positioned to do and do it. The point that I'm trying to make is there's a lot of time wasted because they don't have a unique point of view on it, right? And sometimes we need to be honest about that assessment, right? So, when I talked a little earlier around, I'm quick to recognize opportunities, but I'm also quick to get out of them. I knew I wasn't a good oil trader, right? And before they realized that, I needed to realize it for myself, right? And also, I didn't want to get caught up in the fact that, you're on Wall Street, you end up getting paid more and more money each year, and it's harder to leave. Sometimes you got to cut your losses. And that's one of the greatest lessons I learned as a trader, right? Ride your gains, cut your losses, right? And this, for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a cut your losses thing, primarily for folks who know that they're not uniquely qualified to be doing something, right? Entrepreneurship is not a game. This stuff is hard, right? Why make it harder on yourself if you don't feel that unique positioning? So it might be a kind of a shining light moment for you to really think about that, because all of us, each and every one of us, has something that we are uniquely positioned to do, where we are the best person on earth to solve that problem. We shouldn't be embarrassed by like exploring what that actually is. And the example I give folks is you might have a unique perspective on how to fix toilet paper, right? Every time I give that example, like folks laugh, right? But frankly, if you've been like wiping your ass for like 30 years, it hasn't worked really well for you, and you have a unique idea to fix that, fix it. Somebody invented toilet paper, right? Yep. This is the sort of stuff that like I'm talking about. If you have that unique positioning, as I did with like the 15 years of shaving, I didn't know anything about shaving other than the fact that nobody solved my problem. But I knew how miserable I was in that experience. That led to an insight that made me feel that I was uniquely positioned to do it. All of us has it.
Thank you so much for that, Tristan. And you know what? I just have to do like a modern day example of this because it's just been what's on my mind for the past 2 days. Have you seen Tiger King on Netflix?
I'm in the middle of it right now.
That's all I'm going to say, guys. Tiger King.
That's example. So funny. That's so funny.
So as we wind down, Tristan, I just want to ask you this then, because I think it's really important when we think about Walker and Company, this idea of legacy, right? And you say yourself, you want this company to be around for 150 years. why then, like, what's your opinion on legacy? Like, talk to me about what legacy means to you and why, as dream drivers, it's something that we should be thinking about as well.
Well, I mean, I don't think we all have to think about legacy. That's, I think folks have their hopes and dreams, and they don't have to match my own. For me, I realized, again, wealth wasn't the most important thing. Impact was. I think we've created something that, regardless of whether or not the brands are around 150 years from now, people will be thinking about the impact that the brands that we've created have 150 years from now. And, it's likely that Procter & Gamble will be around 150 years from now. And I think a hell of a lot more likely that Walker & Company will be too. If Walker & Company could impact Procter & Gamble's way of thinking in the way that we thought when we started, and it's still around 150 years from now, that's legacy enough, reaching billions of people around the world. And if our name is still around, right, that Walker name will carry and mean something that has impact with a set of values that are meaningful to people. That to me, at least as I, go around the world, kind of work with colleagues, raise my sons, I want them to look to something to aspire to. And that's not, building a business. I can care less if they want to, run companies. I care that they care about the impact that was created through this method of a thing called entrepreneurship, and what values were important in ensuring that impact persisted. That's important to me. It doesn't have to be important for everybody else, but it's important to me. And I like to hope that what we've created over the past 7 years has inspired other people to create something for themselves that are impactful and lasting.
Last thing, to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So if, what are 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
Yeah. So I think first you got to get in the car, right? It's not enough to see them passing by and kind of talk about the color of the exterior and the model of the make, right? You got to get your own damn car and get it inside, right? And then you got to start, right? You got to put the key in the ignition, right? And turn it. All too often there are too many folks who, I get the question like, how do you start? And the only answer that I can give them is start, right? Like there's really no other, and I don't want to be like facetious in saying that, but like that tends to be 95% of the problem. If you just kind of not dip your toe in the water, like get your knee submerged, right? It'll lead to something else, right? So turn the key. And the other thing, you'll never really have cruise control, right? But once you step on the gas, step on the gas. And the great thing about that is you can go at your own speed. I know I'm giving you like all this metaphor stuff.
No, I love it. I love it. And nobody's ever done it this way. I love this. I love it.
You should go at your own speed, right? So, immediately when people say step on the gas, it's like go fast. But you don't have to. And the thing I learned in my story, it's funny. You learn how to drive. One of the first things they tell you, and I never knew this until I started learning how to drive. You like start with your foot on the brake and then you release it as opposed to hitting the gas.
Yeah, you'll start jerking around. You'll whiplash real quick.
When I think about that, like entrepreneurship could be made smoother by going a little bit more slowly, right? And you need to prepare yourself for the acceleration. And that's one thing that I've recognized after these 7 years to make me a little bit more wise to what it's going to take. And I think if you kind of recognize those 3 things, get in the car, turn the ignition, release the brake pedal, you'll be fine.
Thank you so much, Tristan. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can learn more about Bevel, learn about you, get their own kit? Tell us about, where we can.
Sure. So, getbevel.com, getbevel.com. We're also sold in Target stores. We're nationwide at Sally Beauty, CVS, and you can follow me at Tristan Walker on all the social networks. But thank you for this opportunity. It's very, very cool.
All right, so that was a wrap. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing Tristan share his dream driving journey as well as his keys to success. If you love this episode, you know what to do. Please stop what you're doing right now. Screenshot it, share it to Instagram stories, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Anywhere you are on social media, make sure that you're sharing it and engaging. You can find us across the board at Dreams and Drive and use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when posting. And also if you just want to go back and, see what other people are saying or see what other posts we've been sharing as well. Don't forget to enter this week's giveaway. We're giving away a Bevel shave kit, the whole shaving kit from Bevel, right? So if you want to try out Bevel for yourself, you want to really experience the quality, the experience that Bevel is, go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win to enter. And make sure wherever you're listening, you are subscribed so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. All right, guys? If you want to join our weekly newsletter, The Keys, that's a weekly newsletter that I send out once a week, give you updates on what's going on with Dreams and Drive, behind the scenes stuff, all that good stuff. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. So I use this part of the show to just kind of recap everything that's going on. This might be your first time listening. This might be your 200th time listening, right? But it's really important to remember that Dreams and Drive is a community, and I'm constantly looking for you guys to help me grow it. So tell people about this show, right? Sign up for the newsletter. Another way you can support the brand is to shop our Dreams and Drive merchandise. You can get Dreams and Drive t-shirts. We also have special limited edition aprons. I love cooking, so I thought it might be cool to make some Dreams and Drive aprons. We also have our Dreams and Drive classic sweatshirts. So if you want to support that way, go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. Or if you want to find other ways that you can support, you can also go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate. And you can join our Patreon community for only $5 a month. So I want to give a shout out to our newest Patreon community member, and that is Renee. Thank you so much for your donation and your support of the show. It really does mean a lot to me. If you guys want to hear your name on the next show, then you know what to do. So before we go, let me just read you guys this week's review of the week. This is coming from our Apple Podcast reviews, which I always say I appreciate when you guys do it. All you have to do is log into Apple Podcasts, search Dreams and Drive, and then click on write a review. And this is our latest review. And it's coming from Sincerely Toya T. And she says, congrats on the 1 million downloads. First time listener, fellow female podcaster. I saw your post about your major milestone in 2 Facebook podcast groups and had to check out the celebratory episode. Found it very insightful and inspiring. Well, thank you so much, Toya. I love when we get new listeners. I'm really trying to be more active on the interwebs, on the social media lands, and really just beyond sharing the episodes is sharing my story, helping others who might also be trying to build their own content platforms. I know there's a lot of things that I've learned from Dreams and Drive that I can definitely pass on to others. So I appreciate you leaving this review. It really does mean a lot. All right, guys. So that's all I have for this week. I know we are still all battling a lot. I'm still, locked down here in New Jersey. The nation is experiencing and fighting through this COVID-19 pandemic. If you have been affected in any way, if you know somebody who has, my heart goes out to you. I know I've personally known people who have passed and who have suffered, who've recovered. And I really hope that we as Dream Drivers can get through this and know that we are still capable of putting our dreams in drive. They might look different now. We might have to put things in neutral, but don't feel like you have to go into park permanently. All right. I just want to spread that message to you. I know a lot of us are looking for hope. We're looking for messages. We're looking for inspiration. So I thank you for tuning in, and I thank you for choosing Dreams and Drive as a platform that you continue to support, even though, the world is in chaos. So let me give you guys a sneak peek into next week's guest. We're going to be speaking to Khadijah Polly, who is the founder of Kay's Kettle Corn. All right. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again soon. Bye, guys.